Well, hello, everyone. Welcome back. I'm Reverend Tomas, and this is A Course in Miracles 365, Awakening to Love. Title today, You Can Run, but You Can't Hide. Cool. Or is it? Yeah, let's talk about it. Actually, it is cool. You can run, but you can't hide. We are in part 4, chapter 1 of the text. The escape from darkness, which sounds perfectly cool. In fact, that's why we're here. But let's talk a little bit about the way we get in our own way and delude ourselves, shall we? Because this is an adult endeavor. A Course in Miracles is an adult endeavor, and I would go so far as to say all of spirituality is an adult endeavor, because if we're going to lay our illusions aside at all, we're going to have to look at them, aren't we? If we're in denial about it and don't openly acknowledge its existence, apparent existence, happily, as it turns out, then how can we do anything about it? Right? If you're harboring guilt and hatred in your heart, and you've got it buried away, tucked away in a nice little corner reserved for your biggest political enemy or your ex or yourself, then it can kind of stay there. But here you are bringing your attention to this set of practices that we call spirituality. So let's jump in here. The escape from darkness involves 2 steps. Jesus tells us this right off the bat. And let's talk about it. In the very first stage, there's an awareness that darkness cannot hide. That freaks us out. It engenders fear. Darkness cannot hide. If you walk into a room, a dark room, let's say the blinds are closed, it's night, you can't see anything, you may fumble about on the wall for the light switch, which you know deep down in your heart of hearts, in the innermost fabric of your being. Of course, there's no fabric, but somehow you know and trust that there's a light switch there. And as you fumble in the darkness, boom, you flick it on. What happens to the darkness as the light springs forth? It cannot hide. It's gone. It is as though it were never there. So why are we afraid of the realization that darkness cannot hide? Well, because we want to harbor all our little bitterness, all our little resentments. That's why. That's why. Because we here, defining ourselves as human beings, individual human beings, self-sustaining survival units, man, woman, transgender, right, middle-aged, old, young, all of the labels, everything that we put on ourselves that do nothing but separate us from everyone else. All of these identifications go to complicate life, all of it unnecessarily, because none of it's ultimately true. Yet we want to keep the illusions. We want to keep the illusions of being on one side of the political spectrum or another, or as we say, right in the middle of it. We want to assign ourselves certain traits, categorize ourselves, and we want to keep our judgment of other people and sometimes ourselves to ourselves and not raise it to the light. We're afraid to raise it to the light because we've become identified with the judgment. In other words, ego. We've become so identified with it that we argue for its existence. We argue for the existence of the separation that never happened. When we allow ourselves to take a step back, we realize just how delusional it is. Happily, there's a second step. And we realize there's nothing that we want to hide. And that brings the escape from fear, the release from fear. A deep inner knowing, a realization that rises to the conscious level of the mind that there's nothing we want to hide. Even if we could, we wouldn't want to. Why? Because who we are is so much greater than that. Somewhere along the line, you've had this conversation with yourself in this lifetime. In this lifetime, you've had it. Otherwise, you wouldn't be watching this. There's so much else to consume on social media, isn't there? There's so much else to absorb our time and attention. And here you are, and I applaud you for this, committed to your spiritual practice. That's badass in this world, isn't it? And just a reminder, watch the last video because you are making an impact. You're making an impact just by listening to your inner voice that says, there has got to be a different way of seeing things. There's got to be a different way, a happier way, a better way. And you know what? I know there is one, so I'm going to look for it. And you're going to find it because it is you, inevitably. So on the path, let's all cultivate the willingness to hide nothing, to bring all of our illusions to the truth. That's what this course says repeatedly. We're bringing our illusions to truth. Truth just is like the light in a dark room. It shines all of the illusions away. They're canceled. And not with hatred, simply with light. The light doesn't make an opponent of the darkness. It simply shines it away. The light simply is what it is. Darkness disappears in its presence. Our awakening is like that. Just like that. So we cannot, even if we wanted to, and we certainly act like we want to, we cannot forever deceive ourselves. We can momentarily deceive ourselves, but we can't hide in darkness. We cannot hide because the truth of who we are cancels the darkness. It simply shines it away. We all reach a realization here on the path at some point that we're expending so much effort to define and defend our personal territory that it is suffering to us, that it's costing us everything to defend nothing. And we see people all of the time that will defend the illusion with their physical lives. They would rather die than take a look at the ego, than take a look at all of the people, all of the situations that present themselves for them to forgive. They would rather die than see. And here you are, who would rather see. This is why one of the workbook lessons is, above all else, I want to see. Very important, isn't it? It's very important to this thought system because we're undoing the ego. We have to want to come out and play in the light. We have to invite it in, don't we? We realize that we can't hide forever. Because even when we're running and hiding, we still remember the light. We recognize it, even if it's just a fleeting glimpse. Ideas leave not their source. We remember. Somehow, deep down, somewhere, you do remember. And as we run amok, we absolutely run around deceiving ourselves. We know in our hearts that we're deceiving ourselves. So what do we do? Enter the series of practices and traditions that we call spirituality. Here in the thought system of A Course in Miracles, we give everything over to our inner teacher and invite our inner teacher to direct our forgiveness. Just like that. Reality belongs only to spirit. And the miracle that we've been discussing here, and we'll discuss throughout, this is A Course in Miracles, after all, it acknowledges only the truth. It acknowledges only the truth, and therefore it dispels our illusions about ourselves. It dispels the illusion that our brother's out to get us. It dispels our illusion that we're an independent, self-sustaining survival unit under attack from all sides. Therefore, we must preemptively seek to destroy, which doesn't exist anyway, except in a raving of our deluded mind. It sounds so serious, doesn't it? Well, actually, it plays out that way. The miracle dispels our illusions about ourselves and puts us in direct communication, as this course says, communion with God. Pretty powerful. It's powerful stuff. And we come to find out that all of our errors are simply lacks of love. Let's talk about this component here. All of our mistakes are simply that. They're mistakes. They're a lack of love. If we go with the premise, absolute truth, God is, period. It means only God is. Nothing real can be threatened. Nothing unreal exists. Herein lies the peace of God. That is the summary of A Course in Miracles. So if you're feeling bogged down in this material, which can happen from time to time, I mean, it really can. It happens to everyone that picks up this course and endeavors to study and practice it. Is there going to be some moments of, huh? Aren't there? That's when it's very helpful to have some of these handy phrases and ideas that encapsulate the entire course, such as the summary. And the idea that, well, ideas leave not their source. We're going to have moments and days on the path where we get confused and lost. And the beautiful thing about all of this, the beautiful thing about salvation is while there may be some very painful moments, and of course there are those, we're simply mistaken. When we see ourselves as this, we're simply mistaken. There's nothing wrong with us. There can't be anything wrong with us because we're not bodies. We are spirit. We are not this thing that they call Homo sapiens sapiens, i.e., human beings, modern, anatomically modern. Well, what does that mean? You're not a body. What you see before you is an image on your screen. It is literally a projected image on your screen. It's YouTube. Everything we see is a projected image on our screen. Our reality is not this. It's not this thing that we call the world. It's not a planet that we call Earth that appears to orbit something we call the sun. It's not who we are. And deep down, we all know this. So when we run and hide, we know that we're running and hiding, and we know that we cannot stay hidden forever. So let's unburden ourselves of that guilt. Let's unburden ourselves of fear, of trying to be something that we're not. It's very powerful. And yes, it's true as students of A Course in Miracles that we don't always grasp the meaning of this the first time through. I certainly didn't. I certainly didn't grasp the meaning of this, especially with the workbook, which is how I began my studies with this course, incidentally, was with the workbook for students. And there were ideas that I thought, oh man, why am I doing this again? What is this trying to teach me? Good questions. Ask them. But don't ask yourself. Ego doesn't know. Ego wants you to put this down and go back to watching something else, right? That's what it wants to do. If you're asking the question, why are we talking about this? What the hell is this projected image on my screen actually saying? Anyway, well, who's this guy? I'm you. Right? If you're wondering why you're doing this, ask your inner teacher. Ask your inner teacher what to do with this. Ask your inner teacher what to do with this lesson, with the next lesson, with this passage of the text, with the next passage of the text, with this forgiveness opportunity, with this situation. What shall I do? Ask your inner teacher what the purpose is. Ask to be shown. And in doing this, as we do this, we step aside. We set the ego aside every time that we do this. Why? Because we're being grown-ups. We're not trying to hide anymore. Because we can run, and you can run, and you can hide. You can turn this off. Many of you might have turned this off already. I don't know. We don't have to listen to the voice for God. But should we choose to, Well, talk about having a completely different experience. As always, there's no substitute for our study, and there's certainly not any substitute for our practice. Ever. There never is. As we practice, as we go forward, the experiences that we have as a result show us, demonstrably show us, experientially show us that these teachings are true. So if you're new to this course, it's powerful. It is not the only approach, of course. There are many doors in spirituality. So you'll have to ask your inner teacher whether this is the approach for you, whether this is something that you can take and learn from on your own walk if you're practicing another tradition or other traditions, as some of you are, right? We have that option happily, thankfully, because there are many doors. The theme is ask your inner teacher. Really, this course aims to get us in touch with our inner teacher. Now, the more we do that, the faster we set the ego aside, and it's an adult endeavor. So if you're saying, no, I want to go back and run and hide and do something else for a while, no problem. You may do that as long as you wish. This message is for all of you who no longer wish, and you are many. And for that, I thank you. All right, guys. We'll keep going here. The subscription button is right down here in the corner. That's the red arrow. I'd love to have you join me, and I will see you all very, very soon.